Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. You're looking very smart. Oh, wow. Is London sunny, Henry? That's impressive.
Not sadly London. It's Eton.
Eton. Oh, there we are.
Eton, yeah. Very well.
Excellent.
Morning, Beck. How are you?
Hello,
Good
let me
morning.
just get my microphone sorted. Hang on, I haven't got it all working. Just a sec. Audio.
Can hear you. That's
We
fine.
can hear you. It's all fine.
Yeah,
It's
but
all
you'll
good.
get an echo from this because the microphone isn't coming through the right thing. Let me see if that works. Talk to me.
Talking to you.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there we
Great.
are.
Yeah, sorry. That way you won't get an echo. I've got all the good equipment. We may as well use it.
Excellent.
I think you're probably the most professional person we've ever had
Oh,
on this. Isn't
that
how many
lovely?
years is it? 4 years, Philip? Steve, sorry.
Yeah, probably, 3.5 years, something like that. Yeah. 230 events we've done. So,
Oh, wow. I didn't know quite what to expect. So, I have prepared something, but I didn't know whether it was that formal or whether you want me to just kind of be.
Just be.
Just be, Beth. Just be.
I have lots of content. I can, I've done like 3 speeches today. So
A bit of both. A bit of both.
Structure
Would be great. A
yeah,
bit of both.
Okay. Well, I've got quite a long set of slides, which you probably don't want me to run all of them. And Henry wants to rip them all off and put them on the internet, which I don't usually let anyone do.
There you go. Nice.
We were just chatting. No, if you put something up, we can't stop it being seen by people.
That's okay. I don't mind them seeing it. They see it all
Yeah.
the time out there. I just don't put it. I don't publish things to YouTube. So stuff like that is my world and reality because this is how I eat, is educating.
Sure.
So if you hand away everything you do for nothing, no institution will ever pay you to do it.
Are you saying you don't want us to record this video as a video? Yeah.
I think what I've done is skinny enough that it won't matter. Okay. So I've taken the bulk of the meat out of anything that's particularly high proprietary.
Okay. Brilliant.
So record away. Let's have some fun.
Okay. Well, we are recording, but we'll establish that later on. But I'm gonna mute now because I'm in Spain, Beck. So
lovely.
I'll sit in the background and let you and Henry and Chris enjoy yourselves.
So do you want to be? Is it a panel? What format do you want this to take?
No, it's just you. It's just you, and then you've got about however many people turn up asking you questions. And
cool.
Chris and I work on letting people in, and if we see somebody in chat who's making some comment which we think is interesting, we ask them to come up and have a chat with you.
Cool.
And if, on the other hand, they want to stick their hand up, they have to stick their hand up. They can't just butt in. But a lot of people typically people have stuck their hands up in the past. So it's that kind of thing. It's quite different from the kind of thing you get at Pensions UK events where people have to, write a question down on a little form and then submit it via an app and all that kind of nonsense. We just get on with it here.
Yeah, no, I've done talkback radio for a whole hour today, so I'm brave for anyone.
So it's called talkback radio. Okay, well, we'll introduce you as talkback radio then. That's a good.
No, I just go along and do talkback radio at the opening of a door in this country. So they ring me up as free content because retirement is the airwaves are full of retirees. So
is that right?
I just did an hour on my book at 5 o'clock on drive time before coming here.
What time of the day are we for you right now, Beck?
It is 7:30 in the evening.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. It's a good time. I do a lot of my UK stuff at this time of the day, and it's proving to work quite well to overlap with your mornings.
Good.
And what have you done so far in the UK?
Secured myself a column in the Times yesterday.
Did you?
That's going to be fun, isn't it?
We've yet to see that arrive. I subscribe to that, so I'll make sure when
Great. I mean, it'll be the next couple of months. We won't be rushing into it, but yeah, we're going to have a column in the Times. Feels a bit special.
That's you.
Well, me.
Me is we. That's
me
what we
is
call
we.
the royal we in the UK.
Well, I don't know. It's me. I'm going to have a column in the Times. I kind of can't believe it. I asked for one, and goodness forbid they've said yes.
Superb.
there is.
Yeah, I have a column here in Australia, and it's one of the funnest things I do. You don't get paid a lot to do these things, but the engagement that you get from it is just phenomenal. So when I went to go into the UK with the book, I thought, this is one of the things I'd really love, is to tell stories and in a format where people are already reading them.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's one of the things. It's not in the slideshow today. I'll tell you a little bit about who I am, but yeah, I haven't put that one in because it hasn't come to life yet. But once it is, we can, bit of fun.
Have you heard of something that's happening in the UK called targeted support? Do you know what that means?
Targeted support?
Yeah. Does that mean anything to you?
No. Tell me.
It's our regulator, the FCA. We got two. We got one for occupational pensions, TPI, and one for individuals, the FCA. And the FCA's one basically says, well, in the past we've made sure that nobody got any advice unless they were regulated. We're kind of relaxing that now. We'd like people to get on and get the information they need to make a decision, and we're going to give them targeted support. So we want all kinds of people to get involved in providing people with the targeted support they need to take decisions. So I guess one of the things that we'll be interested in is to hear from you what your position is on all this kind of
We have general information over here, and we are starting to get a new piece of legislation that is coming in between comprehensive advice and general advice, which will allow institutions to provide education-based and even advice to members at scale, which was taken away for 8 years here. Because they all bit the hands of the legislators and did the wrong thing. So we are now letting the reins back up, but the government's torn between the advice industry and so it'll be interesting to see, because I think there's evidence that people who understand a system better get better outcomes, right? And advice is one path, education's the other, and I think a mix of both is a valuable thing. People need to know enough not to get tricked by advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's my stance in Australia as well. I love advisors, but advisors sometimes act in their own best interests.
Conflicts, yeah.
Is that polite? So do institutions.
Your money is my money. Advice.
Surely not. Surely not.
John here is
all in the same industry then, clearly.
Never happened to me in 50 years. No.
Never. I haven't had 3 advisors in my lifetime, 2 of which have taken advantage of me.
Oh, well.
So gradually people are joining us. I can introduce a few of them because I know them. Peter, nice to see you. I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure, Peter, about yourself, but you might want to introduce yourself. Terry Pullinger down here below is an old mate of mine who operates within unions, and he's been very much a spokesperson for the working man for as long as I've been around.
Awesome.
Peter Cameron Brown is another of our good friends who is an accountant but acts for occupational pension schemes, but is also very interested in the fate of the people who he's providing pensions for. And are we letting other people in, or are we out?
I think the setting is allowing everyone to join. So
okay, as we go along, that's fine. Peter, are you able to introduce yourself, Peter Bradley?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm very interested in this topic. I'm, as Henry said, my background is a finance director of a medium-sized organisation or group, including subsidiary in Australia at one stage. We are. I'm now the chair of a trustee board for a defined benefit pension arrangement in the UK, which operates on a shared ambition, a sort of cooperative basis between the proceeds are shared between the employer in terms of contribution rates and the members in terms of enhancing the defined benefit pension contributions. And we've been quite successful in that recently. Enhancing the defined benefits by 10% per annum the last couple of years, and cutting the employer's funding rate by 5% of pensionable pay. So it's a rather unique organisation, but I'm also interested in the general background to pension arrangements. I should also say that my sister lives in Adelaide.
Ah.
And, she was involved in the financial services industry, but not in an advisory capacity. So,
Yeah, right.
so that's my background.
Awesome. Thank
I'm
you.
pleased to see that the male the male dominance has been broken. Charlotte, nice to see you.
Charlotte's here.
Hello, nice to see you too. How are you?
Hello.
Do you want to introduce yourself, Charlotte?
Yeah, hello everybody. I am head of retirement at NatWest Cushion. So very looking forward to hearing what Bett's got to say and how we can help our members with the big retirement questions.
Charlotte's been helping me with my book.
Ah, right.
I do
you
have
are
a
the
bit of an
same
insight
Charlotte.
into Beck's, and
She
I
has
have
a
listened.
secret. She's read it.
Well, that's great to have you here, Charlotte. Thank you very much. We're looking just along. Chris Giles, nice to see you on the call. Are you there somewhere? I'm assuming that's Christopher Giles. I can only see the gill. Okay.
He's just on mute. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And Porrig.
I'm off mute now. Morning, Henry.
Yeah. Morning, Chris. Morning, Porrig. Porrig is a journalist, but also around about my age, I think. Is that right, Paul? Porrig, end of career. We always told we're at the end of our career. We don't really feel we are. Paul
I
Flanagan.
would debate that you don't have to be the end of your career in midlife. You've got plenty of time.
Paul Flanagan, lovely to see you. Thomas Richmond. Okay. Either of you want to introduce yourselves before we get going? Happy, I think it's much nicer when that happens and you all feel comfortable. Okay, right, well, the time clicking by to 10:32. Let me introduce Beck Wilson, who I came across, I think through a friend of ours, Damien Stankham, who sadly can't be here today. And yes, thank you, Porrig. Beck is coming to talk with us at the Pensions UK conference next month, but we wanted to give her an opportunity to sort of get a taste of what it's like over here in the UK. So that's what she's doing today. Beck, do you want to introduce yourself more fully than that and talk to us about the sort of work you are doing in the UK? You mentioned a certain newspaper.
Yeah, look, I'm at the very beginning of my journey into the UK, so I'm going to put some slides up and tell you properly about me in a minute. But yeah, I'm very pleased to come along today. Thank you very much. I'm coming to the UK for the first time since I was 22, for any longer than a day or two. When I used to live in the UK for a couple of years in the heyday of the banking boom, and you know, since then I came home and had a family and did all the boring things in life. And now I see myself as heading back into what I call my prime time, the phase before retirement where we have flexibility and choice. And then, you know, my job is really education in retirement. So I put together a set of slides today to tell you a bit of a story about an epic retirement and what it is and what it's done here in Australia. And the story doesn't change very much for the UK, except that technically it's different. The way you do retirement is a little bit different to Australia, but not that different, funnily enough. You guys are really adopting a lot of things that I can see in common, and maybe we've learned a few things along the way, but I am not an actuary and I am not a financial advisor. I am much more of a consumer educator. So you guys will have much more technical knowledge than me in everywhere that I go. And in Australia, that's worked okay because I don't threaten the financial advice market and I don't step into the actuaries' role. In fact, the actuaries have become some of my best friends because they make sure I'm technically correct. And I'd really like to appeal to you for your help as I come into the UK to educate consumers, because one thing I can do is engage the consumer. And I know that's one thing a lot of actuaries really want is an engaged consumer. And this field is sometimes hard to engage the consumer in at the institutional level. So what I might do, because once I put these slides up, I don't think I can see all your wonderful warm faces, which is the bit I really like about this, is I'll put them up, but then I'll try and take them down as quickly as possible and talk to your faces. And if you can leave your cameras on, that gets me really excited because then I can see if you're reacting positively or negatively, because I'm used to speaking in rooms full of people where I get feedback in body language and all of those wonderful things. So cameras are boring when you turn them off. Let me pop a little slide deck up that I've got prepared for today. And what I'm going to do...
These slides are being recorded, everyone.
That's okay.
I'm assuming that nobody wants to object to recording the slides. No? Okay,
We're all
carry
good.
on, please, back, Basil.
I don't normally put my stuff on the internet, is the fun thing, recorded, but we do a lot of education. So this stuff is some of the stuff I do, and I just wanted to give you a taste because as we bring it into the UK, I think we're going to have a bit of fun. I'm hoping we have a bit of fun. So let's dive in, and maybe you guys can tell me where I can do it better. So I published a book 2.5 years ago called How to Have an Epic Retirement in Australia, and it was my first book, and I had no idea how it would go. Before I start, though, I will stop on my disclaimer and make sure you all know I do not give financial advice. I don't have financial advice license, and I don't want one. I can provide very valid factual information under all of the international schemes that allow me to speak in fact, and that's where I base myself and all of the education I do. And the minute I'm tearing away from facts, I bring experts into the room that can answer questions legally. Okay. So who am I? There's How to Have an Epic Retirement, the book I published 2.5 years ago, and that has become the best-selling retirement book for the last 3 years in Australia. But not just retirement book, because there isn't very many retirement books, so that wouldn't be enough for me. I'm a bit of an overachiever. So that it's actually become the number 2 best-selling self-help book in Australia for all the years, and it's now on the backlists at all the major retailers and in the middle of the bookshelves, which I'm pleased to say, because it's been a real fight to get retirement off the bottom shelf at the back of the bookstore where old people read, and really get it into the midlife and into the vibrant spirit of what it is. And when I wrote that book, I wanted to write the what to expect when you're expecting for retirement. Anyone who's had kids in the last 40 years will remember that book, I hope. It is the Bible for how to traverse a changing stage of life. And you buy it before you go through the change, and then you read it at every step of the way to try and understand the choices and things that are happening in your life. And that was the framing I always pitched to my publisher and said, I think we can then update it every year and keep it alive as a book as these generations come through retirement. And so far in Australia, we're up to our first proper update. We've done little updates, but our first proper update comes out in December this year. And it's a full update, and we bring New Zealand into that book in December. But I then published another book because I realized there was a bigger problem than just retirement. The people at 60 or 65 today are looking forward to retirement, and they're excited about it, and they want it. Some do. But then there's a whole nother cohort of people, and maybe you guys are some of these, who don't necessarily see the R word as an aspiration, who need to be preparing, but they need to be preparing for the choices they're going to have from midlife on. And they need to think about and understand a whole lot of different things that are going to happen in their lives. And they have no one to tell them other than the people who've struck misfortune in their lives along the journey and then have learned from the mistakes, because there isn't really any rule books for the second half of life. So I wrote this book called Prime Time to appeal to a generation from about 47 to 70 who are in what I reckon are the best years of our lives and haven't been taught the new life templates actuarially and in real life for how to embrace those stages of life. And I think the bigger our pension pots get, the bigger our superannuation gets in Australia, which we know the younger cohort is getting a bigger set of pots, the more this message is going to appeal, because they're going to get to a point earlier in life where they can make choices earlier in life. They're not going to be waiting till 65 or 66 to step into their state pension and make decisions based on just that money and the little bit they can put on top. We're going to have a generational shift in retirement. So it's kind of the prequel to How to Have an Epic Retirement. And therefore, it doesn't talk about the same things, but it does kind of cross over. So that one only came out in August, and we got it as high as number 2 on the Australian bestseller list in the first week behind Mel Robbins. I couldn't knock her off, but that's okay because she's sold 5 million books. So, we can let that be an okay enough achievement. So for me, that's what I'd done. In Australia, I've then launched a podcast. Well, I actually launched the podcast 2 years ago, 18 months ago, because I knew I wanted to take this book on, but I needed to build kind of a little cult following around from the younger pre-retiree. And I didn't think a retirement podcast was what I wanted to do, because once you've done 12 shows in a retirement podcast, you've kind of done the same stuff over and over. But if you do a midlife podcast, there's so many places to go. So I got the biggest media company in Australia to make that podcast for me. And we have a deal where they do all the ad sales and all the production, and I just do the fun bit. And they bring the biggest radio audience to that show as well, because they have the radio stations. And it's allowed me to build one of their most commercially successful podcasts, but it's also in the top 200 up against comedians, football shows and stuff. So we get the unsexy topic of retirement that nobody could ever get anyone to listen to, thankfully, into the charts. And then I write a newsletter. It started as an Australian newsletter on Substack, if any of you are familiar with Substack. And it blew out on me. It turned into a newsletter. I had to roll the UK out recently into its own newsletters, because it's now at about 100,000 people in the UK. So we just started making a UK newsletter separate to the Australian newsletter. And as we bring these two jurisdictions to life, what we've really learned about retirement is that it's, as much as you want it to be global, it can't be global because technically it's local. But globally, there's some messages that carry across retirement. So it's a bit of fun to kind of figure out what has to be technically local and how can we share the messages across the world as well. The reason it did go viral, the reason I get to, I think, have a little play here, or hope I can have a little play, is I started a Facebook group about 18 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, 2 years ago, called the Epic Retirement Club. And it started in Australia as a group of people championing retirement, and it blew up absolutely crazy. And people all over the world last year started to jump on this Facebook group. It's got as big as 50 million engagements a month. It's slipped back while the British have been on holidays to 30 million engagements in the last month at the moment. But it's just phenomenal to think that people are in there listening to their own and each other's retirement stories and hearing about a modern retirement that they just can't get a hold of the insight on. And we just get to sprinkle education to those people through what they do. But mostly it's a peer-to-peer environment. We have 20 global moderators operating on every time zone of that group, because we don't allow financial advice to be given or received in that group, because we just don't want to end up with the liability risk or the dumb things that people recommend to each other to become viral. So yes, it puts a handbrake on it not being 100 million reach, but I have some ethics that I really stand by, and that's been part of my journey. I've run a media company with 1 million followers for 10 years before I did this. So a bit like an Australian version of Saga, but just the media and the travel kind of stuff. And so I've seen a lot of interesting stuff. I do a lot of basically my business is consumer-facing scaled retirement education. So all of that media stuff, I couldn't afford to do it because you don't get paid enough to do it. I also have a column in the Australian newspapers every weekend, syndicated around the country. That's really fun to write because it gets really massive readership. And I just commentate whatever I feel is important. They don't make me pitch it. They just kind of let me write what's important to the consumer. And so I have then built a course, a 6-week program built around retirement education, but retirement education my way. I didn't do it the way maybe other people did retirement education. I wrote the book and I went, this is actually the textbook for a course that can be scaled and that is designed for the funds to run it B2B2C. So that is the ultimate way that we are hoping and looking to roll out education. And we are in Australia rolling out our first, we're 2 years in and we're rolling out our first major fund program now. It literally went to market for their consumers today, to 90,000 consumers to invite them to the pilot, which is, the market doesn't know about that in Australia yet. So it's a secret. We'll do the PR on it later this week. They don't even know we've been doing it, and it's in their brand. It's beautiful. It's massive. But I've also built my own program, and this program has been running 2 years and put thousands of people through it, and they pay for it themselves, and they come out with extraordinary uplift in retirement confidence. let me talk to you about the content, because that's really, you've heard me big note myself, and that's really not what I came for. I just want you to understand me a little bit, because I'm passionate about this sort of scaled education that simplifies the complexity of retirement, because I think the language we use and the jargon and the challenges that people face as they're hitting this stage of life mean this stuff's hard to them, where it might be easy to everybody here to explain all this stuff. Most of the time I'm dealing with somebody who doesn't even know where to start. And I'm not usually talking to the mass affluent, like to the super affluent who have advice, although it's amazing how many of them want to learn as well. And I'm certainly not competing with advisors, because a lot of the people who come and do my programs end up getting advice. They just become better customers, I reckon, of advice, because they make better decisions and they are more aware of their goals. So for me, the whole tenement of what I do is that retirement isn't what it used to be. And I'll tell you a bit of my story the way I tell it to the consumer, if you like. And you can see if you agree with me or want to challenge me. I'm very open to a bit of challenge and a bit of, hey, I might need to twist it for the UK. The UK, sorry, my animations haven't worked as nicely as I'd like. The UK retirement started in 1908, and back then the first pension commenced at 70 years of age. That's when they brought the pension in. And at that point, life expectancy for a man was 50, and for a woman it was 54. So there was a pretty big differential. That differential is actually bigger for the UK than Australia. When we brought in the pension in 1909, we had longer life expectancy, not sure how. In 1970, you got the new contributory pension from 1925, that the new concept that brought your pension age down to 65, but your life expectancy was still 68 and 74. And this is the template I think retirement was built off. We think about retirement as an old person's thing, a thing that, because that's almost in my lifetime. Like, that's the retirement my grandparents had, where they literally retired, took up a position in a lazy boy chair and grew old, and babysat the grandchildren so that my parents could juggle life, right? And it's not that far in time from where we are today, and yet life has changed just so much. And it's hard for us to stop and point this story to everybody and say, hang on, do you realize how much life changed in our lifetime, right? And for many here, you'll recognize that in 2025, we've got this kind of standard life expectancy in the media of 85 and 88, but I'm pretty sure there's plenty of actuaries in this room, right, who know those aren't the numbers we're talking about when we're talking to the consumer. So I have a lot of fun blowing the consumer's mind open that, in fact, the reality of their life expectancy is probably closer in the UK to 92 and 94 at the median. And then we're going to talk about how you can access money and how that changes your decision making through your life, knowing you can access it, but should you access it, and the choices that you have along this journey, so that you recognize they're not things you have to do just because they're available to you. They become choices that you can have. And I don't need to educate you guys on how the pension works. So I'll stick to my own knitting of talking about the story of modern retirement. This is actually, when you look up the Cambridge Dictionary, the definition of retirement in the dictionary. And I'm pretty sure it's not a definition anybody wants to have associated with their life, right? It's still there. And you've got to laugh at that and go, well, I redefine retirement for people when I go into a room and I'm talking about an epic retirement. And this isn't so much as when I'm talking about a prime time, because that's a different conversation starting to come down the age ground. When I get to people who are associating their desires with retirement, they want a retirement like this, right? They want it to be the stage of life where they move from living off their own exertion to sourcing their income from investments, pensions, state pension, and work they really enjoy. And I add work they really enjoy, because a lot of people in retirement today are working. And I think we need to change the narration around retirement to include work, or we need to bring a prime time in before retirement and let people retire later and help them have a phase before they retire of part-time or casual work where there's more flexibility. And that's just about changing the narration for people so that they aren't falling into retirement by force because they haven't made choices, because that's largely how most of both our countries are going into retirement today. 31% of people in both Australia and the UK are choosing to retire. The rest are just redundancy, retrenchment, get sick, find they hit retirement, have to care for an older person or a family member, and they hit retirement head on without a plan. We can do that. Yeah. And so as Peter says, and many people work to retire, but I don't think it's the finish line that it stacks up to be for those people. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because I think there's a lot we can do to prepare people better for retirement. In my opinion, the ultimate goal for the next generation is no longer to retire formally. It's to have the choice, right? And to be at a point at 60 or 63 or 65 where you could, and you choose whether or not you want to, but it's not to have to retire and wait to 66 to retire, because that's the only way I could retire. And, as your pension pots build, you're going to have a change to that narration like we're having in Australia right now, where the next generation of retirees will have more choice. And that's really, at the moment, if you're disengaged, if you're confused, and if you're underprepared, you don't have choice, right? And that's I guess the biggest part of this journey is, if we can help with the clarity on what retirement can be, then you can make the choice without fear about when it's right for you. Why do they want choice? Well, I think there's 3 really big areas. I mean, there's about 7 in one of my speeches for consumers, because I also want people to recognize the choices they have in life if they've got this stuff more certain earlier. And that is, I think people want to ultimately seek more flexible life in their midlife. They want more flexibility. I call it, and you'll see later on, we talk about 3 phases of your prime time: the setup years, the part-timing years, the setup years, the lifestyling years, and the part-timing years. And that's a narration that will come after we settle an epic retirement into the UK market if it works, because you can't bring all these messages at once. It's too many for people, but it teaches people to plan. I think people want the choice to go part-time, and ultimately we've got ageism getting in the way there as well. So we have to have lots more discussions about the employment environment, and frankly, the pension industry has a beautiful tap into the employment environment because of the way your workforce structure with pensions works. It's much better than Australia. Ours are a bit disconnected now. So you've got the ability to drive change back through workforce to support people in this age group. And then I think people do want the choice to retire earlier than state pension age, from what I hear in my community, very much. But then they possibly still want to work after they retire, right? As Henry pointed out, I don't think retirement in everybody's mind is actually what it ends up being when they get there, and they quite like the inclusion of work. So thinking about work and what role it plays in the last third of your life, and how you don't have to live a retirement without work in it. You may just choose not to get paid, right? And still be purposeful and have intention. Or you may get paid as long as you can. So there's a few problems to tackle. I recognise in the UK, some of these are common with Australia, but, I've really wanted to focus on the UK tonight for you guys, because I am hoping to establish epic retirement over there, not just as an Aussie tinkering on the side, but as something we can really help people in the UK as much as we're helping people in Australia. And that is, I think life expectancy has massively increased where you are as well as where I am, and people don't see that life expectancy in their plans. We've got people want and expect more from retirement than they ever have. They want to travel, they want to they want to participate. And I don't think we have narration for that across society. And it's quite hard for the people who are retired to raise the narration on this. People are not engaged with their pensions that more than ever. When I talk to people, the few people I have spoken to so far about pensions, it's a bit of a dire story by the sound of it, about how disengaged they are. And in Australia, it's not dissimilar. But we're at the end of 33 years of a really great accumulation phase that's done the work for people. So when they do start to engage from here on, they're going to be quite pleasantly surprised. And then you've got the same problem we have over here, which is many people distrust advice and want to DIY, but they don't have the knowledge to DIY either. So, and where you get trustworthy knowledge to DIY, when it's all tied to either institutions or advisors, becomes quite an interesting journey. And I'm in Australia, the only one kind of in the middle. And I don't align with any one institution. I work with all the super funds here in Australia, or almost all of them, educating their members, playing on projects with them, but none of them have been, I haven't wanted to take an exclusive arrangement, even if it means I eat less, off the table. And for me, having that smaller but well spread out role seems to help people trust me. So let me dive into an epic retirement. Do you want to stop and talk to me, Henry, or do you want me to keep going? Everybody happy if I keep going? I can see your face.
You keep going. Keep going. But if anyone wants to jump in, now's the chance.
I can see all your faces is the good news. So I have managed to get it so that I'm looking at you, not my slides. So that's lovely. So there's 6 pillars of an epic retirement. The book itself is coming out in the UK with the same framework, but a different set of copy completely. Sorry, Terry's got his hand up. Shall we stop?
Terry, you won't jump on. Yes.
Yeah. Only if you would you prefer this, or would you rather just finish what you?
I'll do what the 6 pillars are, and then we can stop and you can go for your life if you like, and then you'll know kind of the framing. Is that all right?
Yep.
All right. So this is the book. And I think it'll be a bit bigger in the UK. I haven't seen it yet, and I don't think you're going to get the same cover. I think we're on a cover journey at the moment. I've rejected the first cover, so we'll see what the cover turns out like this week, and either that or you'll get the Australian cover. So we'll wait and see. At the moment, the retailers in the UK are saying that it's too much like a fiction book, and they're worried it'll get lost in the shelves. So with the Australian cover, and I'm like, well, it has to look fun, so let's go back and design fun. So because it looks very financial in the last round. So we've got 6 pillars of an epic retirement, and I try to build them around what people need to do in their lives rather than around the financial lessons. I start with time. I'll walk you through all of them in quite a little bit of detail, not diving right down, but for me, these are the issues and areas that I think people can frame up and understand. And I can deliver these in an hour and have people go, oh, yeah, I understand the big picture of my retirement and why I need, and it kind of forces them to take it all in. And I stop on it with, this is something I do in the industry normally. Why does my framing work with the consumer? I keep getting told everywhere I go that people don't want to engage with retirement, and I can't sit there with 50 million engagements in a month and say people don't want to engage with retirement. I think they don't want to engage with institutions' version of retirement, and I think we've got to make retirement something that they selfishly want to engage with in order to get them to engage. And I've worked with this consumer for 15 years, as I said, like people in their 60s, and I know that this phase of life is a very self-indulgent phase, and you need to help them indulge. They deserve it, right? And if you don't help them indulge in this phase, they don't really want to have to work hard for it, right? They've done the hard work. So now let's teach them. So the industry would frame a lot of what I do as pensions, products, tax rules, compliance. To the consumer, I think that feels abstract and boring and not really what they think real life is about. And therefore, they put it on the bench in the corner as a pile of paper and they don't take any action, right? Even if they get some advice, they don't always act on it. For me, I try to use everyday language, really simple language. I connect their financial choices to what they care about, and hopefully use that to mobilize them. And then hopefully I'm trying to turn retirement from a maths problem into a life plan that they can really get a vision for. Just like in the first half of life where you got a vision for the career you wanted and the life you wanted, and then you went and did the work to get it. Well, I don't think we help people create the picture of what a good retirement looks like. The only thing they have is FOMO or institutions kind of telling them how to do it. And, we don't want them to be FOMOing something they can't afford, because then they feel sad and left out. But we want them to find people like them and take a journey that they can relate to. So when you talk about life first and money second, people lean in my experience. When you talk about money first and life second, you've lost them at money. So let's, and this is a fun thing that I put up in a similar way in an Australian presentation to the industry recently, and that is that consumers don't wake up excited about pension statements or super statements and tax bands and how the tax system works and how they can manipulate it, or a very small percentage do. Maybe this room possibly does wake up excited about it, but they wake up excited about the travel they can do and how they can be healthier, and how they can feel good about the money they do have, and how they can live well within their means. And so that really sets the framing for me. So let's dive into time. I want you to think about the shape of life when you were growing up. What did it look like, right? And I told a fun story today in the room, and it turned out one of the men in the room at this shareholders association I was presenting to, full of about 300 consumers. One of them was one of the guys that lived 3 doors down from me. He was the father of one of my friends, and we used to all ride bikes up and down the street as kids, and fish for guppies in the local creek and do all the things that kids did back then. Right? How many of you lived like that growing up? I'm sure you had a similar parallel experience of being outside as kids, and living a very raw, real lifetime. To me, I only became a teenager when needing to use the phone to speak to my friends, that long corded phone that went under the door to your bedroom if you were lucky, or you had to stand next to because it was attached to the wall. That was how my teenage years started to get their freedom. And you really got your freedom, if you think about what makes a teenager, it's when the outside world comes into your life. So when did the outside world come into your life, and how did that happen? And then I'm going to explain to you how it's happening today. And then we sort of went into adulthood at 18, 19, 20, maybe 21. I moved to London at 21 and was paying my own bills from 21, right? Very different to my 22-year-old who's nicely comfortable here, who's gone overseas and come home, and I've kept paying for everything. When my dad said to me, no, don't do that when you're 24. Don't come home broke and expect to live off me. We have let the world change, and the world is changing around us. And then we adulted all the way through. We bought houses, we got jobs, we got second houses, we had children, we did all those responsible things, and we adulted all the way through to retirement. And we know that template of life, and we know then you hit retirement and then you hit aging. And that's the old template of life that I guess we're all familiar with. Everybody agree? Yeah. So then I want you to think about this new shape of life. This is where my books come together into one storybook. You're a child until someone hands you an iPhone. And then the outside world is instantly in your life. If your family gives you an iPhone at 8, then you're grappling with the outside world and all the judgment calls and choices you have in front of you when you're 8. If your family hands you one at 13, you've got those choices then. I don't think my kids did a very good job of it at 13. So woe behold the 8-year-olds that are getting phones today. Then they're a teenager, and they're a teenager right up until they fly free on their own, affording their own accommodation. And in both our countries, housing is holding back the next generation from moving into their adult years, which is then actually holding back all the people in their adult years from moving into their prime time, because we don't fly free from adulting until our kids start to fly the nest. So if we started late, if life led us down a path before we had kids, then we are holding on to those expenses in our lives in a way that stop us moving on to the next stage where there's freedoms, because we can't move there unless we have the extra money that we're spending on kids and cost of living, right through till our kids are nearly 30 these days in Australia. I think it's pretty similar in the UK. And so then we get this phase of life here. Once we have some level of financial return for those kids, we're starting to pay down those mortgages. We're starting to see a level of financial independence only for the current generation, not the previous generations turning 65 today. We don't have the wealth in those cohorts yet, but we will see more and more, talking to people in the UK, more and more we will see able to have more freedom in midlife. And then, in my opinion, we're building work, part-time work, depending on whether you define retirement and work as before you retire, you're going to be a part-timer, or whether you've retired and then picked up part-time work. I don't think retirement really happens for a lot of people until beyond 70, even though that's a crucifying narration on the radio. If I was on the radio or things like that, people would want to yell at me for saying that. But I don't think they define retirement the way I define retirement, which is the part where you stop work, right? I actually want people to see a whole phase of life where they could choose to do as much or as little. I do think we have a whole phase of epic retirement where we enjoy participation but don't get paid for it, and we live off passive income. And then I think we head into an aging phase where it's possibly about the last 10 years of our lives, where we do see declining health and we have to access care in our homes all over the world now, and then a short period of frailty. And as you can see, a life shape of around about 95 years in both our countries. I do like people to know the markers, and in the UK, the average age of divorce is 47. So you see that splits property portfolios and investments. It causes people to rebuild their dreams. It rips people's lives apart. And about 40% of people in Australia and the UK are hitting divorce at around that point of life, which, you know, we can't ignore. Workforce participation in the UK drops significantly at 55 to 66. Pension access age, obviously. We see the average age of retirement at 64.6. In Australia, it's 64.8. We have the average age of losing our final parent. And in Australia, we've got this massive narration about how the wealth is going to cascade down and solve the housing crisis. But I think it's journalists dreaming, because the money is going to leave the 90-year-olds and 85-year-olds and go to the 58-year-olds today. And in 5 years' time, it's going to hit people at 62, right? So that's where the wealth transfer, the giant wealth transfer, is going to hit. And so if we want to save the housing crisis, we've actually got to teach that generation to gift on, or we've got to get grandparents gifting to grandchildren, probably while they're alive. Average tenure in an aged care, and this helps people plan for their aging, at the moment is 86.5 in the UK, and your average tenure is about 2.6 years, which helps people get it into their heads. But as you can see, we're going to be very different by the time we all get there. Very, very different. I'm not going to bang on about financial confidence. I'm just going to put it all on screen and show you the 12 things I talk about to consumers. Your cost of living budget, your epic experiences, your pensions, your family home, leveraging tax benefits on the way up, compound investing, the state pension, retirement income planning and layering, working during retirement, types of financial advice that really help, longevity risk and how to manage it, and your legacy in a modern way. And then I teach people about goals, because I think they walk into a financial advisor's office and the financial advisor says to them, so what are your goals? And the person says, I have $333,200 in my pension pot, and I have eligibility for the state pension, and I own my own home in North Windermere. What can I have? And I don't think that's a goal, right? So I want people to understand the difference between a goal and what's inevitable, and get them dreaming before they walk in the room about what their retirement could be, what their options are, what their choices are, what their partner wants. You know, let them ideate, let them dream, so that they want to follow through on their planning. For me, that, and I did the science work in the book Prime Time to add this layer in, because I felt so passionately that it was frustrating me in the market. Scientifically, a goal is a desired outcome that wouldn't otherwise happen without some kind of intervention. So a goal isn't what would inevitably happen to your pension, with your pension pot. It's something you have to dream up that would not have happened anyway, right? So that could be travel, it could be purpose, it could be something you want to learn, it could be looking after your health, right? But you've got to have that idea and that kernel to follow it through. And if we don't get people dreaming, they don't go and make retirements, because this phase of life is a phase of life that has been proven to happen to people. And I just think we can do a whole lot of mobilization. Health, I teach a whole lot about the science of modern aging. I'm not sure how far you guys go into it, but I absolutely love this space and follow it all over the Western world. There's 4 things that the scientists are saying about what we can be doing. Basically, they say that the 4 big diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, I didn't put all these slides in, but the 4 big reasons we die right now, dementia, and the other one's not coming to me, are all caused by one central disease. And the key is actually that they're being linked to the disease of aging. But it's actually a scientific disease. When you pull it apart, it's a disease at the cellular level that is seeing our cells decline because we're not doing the right things in our behavior to allow those cells to have what's called cellular senescence, where the cells refresh themselves and take all the gremlins out and sort of wash the gremlins out. And there's 4 things we can all be doing to improve our health scientifically. And we can be doing it from midlife, but we can teach retirees how to do the right practices. And so proactively pursuing good health using the modern aging practices. And then the other part of what I teach is how to prevent or catch and treat chronic disease early. So I put a whole lot of things up that they can all be doing, all the tests available by the government and all the stuff that's just easy to get in the habit of doing every year. so that you look after your health. Because if you don't look after your health, but you've got a big pot of money, what's the point? I just can't see the point. So I won't dive down that rabbit hole. Happiness and fulfillment is a big area for me. I have done a lot of work to try and understand and make this stuff real without it being psychobabble. So for me, I don't think a lot of people in Australia don't really love the woo-woo wellness stuff in this generation. So instead, I talk about it with the science. And I always point out how long we might live and how boring life would be if we got to 65 and stopped learning. So, you know, and I point out what happens to a lot of people in life when they hit retirement. And this is the average person's life when they get to retirement, unless they've done some really proactive thinking. The work and career bubble still sits in the center of their world. And they might have one or two hobbies. Most of the rest of their life is trying to juggle a bit of exercise, the obligations to family, laundry, and you know, all of the obligations we have, and the admin of life. And we do this and retire, and what happens is we get left with this giant hole in the middle of our lives, and we don't really know how to fill it other than to go back to work. And so if we teach people to re-identify with themselves beyond the title and the job they did, it's actually something that I think all of us would benefit from midlife, not just people at retirement, but it's a logical conversation to have, because people see retirement as this finish line and they run towards it like it's the ultimate goal. And then on the other side, they go from this having all this social connection and interaction around people that they have things in common with. And on the other side, there's this beautiful light and then nothing. And so they have these sort of honeymoon period and then a great big fall in a heap. And I know you have the wonderful Dan Haylett over in the UK, who I've done a couple of shows with, and he talks about this stuff as well. We're both quite passionate about it. So I talk about the science of happiness and fulfillment, how to go seek it. And you've got hedonic happiness, where you can go and seek dopamine hits and get enjoyment into your life in a quick incremental way, but it doesn't have long lasting benefits. It just gets you out of a rut. And then you can have eudaimonic happiness, the type of happiness that has a real sense of meaning and purpose. And I teach people how to go seek that. I think it's coming up on the next slide. And then you have social or relational happiness, which is just kind of turning up and participating, right? Because we forget it's so important to not always be working, but to just be meeting other people and being a part of something like this group, right? With things in common. So I like to see people take a slower approach to transitioning out of retirement if they can, if we can get them to understand their choices to move from full-time work to part-time work, or maybe to take longer holidays, or maybe to take a sabbatical when they're burned out instead of just throwing it all in and then having to backpedal when they realize they regret it. Take time to do their healthcare, take time for family. This is a conversation we've got to have with employers as well, to be welcoming of this as people get older, to retire formally, maybe halfway through the process, take up some volunteering, build some pursuits in your life. And when I say the word pursuits, I mean something very specific. A hobby is one thing. It's something you do. A pursuit is something you pursue learning in. So if you aren't getting better at your hobby, if you aren't investing in further knowledge, I think you're missing something in your life. And I want to help people keep their minds cogitating in this phase. Travel, I talk a lot about travel because I ran a travel business for over 60s for 5 years, so I can tell everyone how to get amazing deals, and it doesn't change in the UK. The industry is quite similar. It's shitty margins, so you can't just go and chase a deal. You have to know how to find one and when to find one. It is important to think about the journey of travel, because it does have a reality that it's very hard to get insurance once you're 80 all over the Western world. And I like people to see the primetime challenges now as well, the exciting dopamine hit type travel that we can do while we're still working, epic holidays, slow travel, you know, that type of stuff that we all dream of, less challenging holidays. I don't like the idea of people stopping travel early if they, you know, it keeps your brain really seeing and attaching to interesting things. And Australians are really mega travelers, right? Probably more than Brits by the sound of it. So I teach people about how to be a type of traveler. I won't drown you in all my stuff. And then my last section is your home as you age. And this is not the sexiest area to talk about, but most people in the previous generations, and if you've been managing your own parents' through their final years would go from the family home right now in Australia to aged care because they've had poor planning. They've resisted moving out of their big houses. And what we're now seeing is an ability to have a conversation with people. And I need to change the words on this one because I haven't updated it with the UK words, but we're having a conversation with people about their choices through this phase of life. And if they were to choose to live in more appropriate housing earlier, would they then not have to pay for as much care because they're not trying to maintain the property as well as themselves? Would they then be in a better position if they moved to a lower maintenance home or an age-friendly home with their partner? If the woman's going to live longer, and let's face it, she probably does, if she's going to live longer, is she going to have to pack up the whole house and then go live somewhere cold and new on her own after you die? Or can we help these decisions happen earlier and better for everybody and have them living in more age-appropriate housing? And then we find this home care business in both our countries is growing quite significantly, and it's where the governments want to focus their money. So if people understand that they can live in low-maintenance housing and have a better life, and that's kind of me. How was that?
Well, I think it was pretty good. But I can feel some pushback in there. I
That's
see
good. I love some pushback.
Bobby coming up. Maybe we'll put you on in a second, Bobby. But let's start with Terry because you were there first. Terry, do you want to take
you haven't
yourself
got your
off?
sound on, Terry.
Take yourself off, Sam.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, I really applaud you for raising the profile of this issue of retirement, of pension, and in some way, trying to close the knowledge gap, which is massive, by the way, in terms of pensions, from a pensions perspective, I'm talking about. I share with you that I wouldn't say I've got all the technical knowledge, so I'm at one with you on that, whereas most of the other people on here definitely have. But I also think I've attended the University of Life, and there's a sense and I don't mean this rude in any way, perhaps I can't find the right words, but there's a sense of utopia about what you're presenting based on, I don't know what life's like in Australia. If it's typical of what you're talking about, then I wish I'd have immigrated there a few years ago. But I think in Britain you may find a lot of pushback on some of the things you're trying to get across, depending on what circles that you're speaking in. So I've been a trade union leader. I've represented workers most of my life, and the biggest thing I've fought for is standard of living, employment, and retirement security. That's what I've argued for all the way through. So not just in retirement, people need that security. Now, the problem is, and I'm passionate, sometimes angrily passionate, about the need for a wage in retirement. So a pension scheme that gives you a wage that runs alongside your state pension. So that helps you have that security in life. Don't do it for it, but it's, don't make people walking around with their pockets bulging, but it gives them a chance to maintain their standard of living. Because the things that have changed, well, the things are, and people could take exception of this, and I'm sure people will, but I think the pensions industry generally has made that so much harder to achieve. Where we've gone down the road of CD schemes where I think other people are using that system to make lots of money and not lots of money for the people who need it in retirement. So in that way, it works against the philosophy of a pension scheme of that security in retirement. Things like the pension age, they're now talking about moving it out to 70 years of age. People working in retirement, because I think where you're right on health, retirement does coincide with what happens to your body. Now, people might be longer because of medicine and everything else, although I think that's starting to get challenging now, I've got to be honest with you. I've never heard so many people in the UK getting cancer as I've heard recently, which is shocking, and friends you've lost and stuff like that. But my point is, your body ages regardless. What the medicine can't give you is all your joints or your knees don't play up, your shoulders don't go, you don't need this, you don't need a new hip, it doesn't do any of that. So when we're talking about, people can work longer or people have got that choice, I don't believe that's true. You have to find a 73-year-old fireman And you're not going to find a 73-year-old, very rarely, postman or anyone builder, anyone doing a physical job like that. So people like us, if we can get involved and keep pushing the pension, yep, maybe, or an office, or you're a financial advisor, you can. But for genuinely, what I would say is probably the biggest percentage of people are ordinary working people, that option don't exist. Equally, as you rightly pointed out, the way people have changed with their children. I was a postman and I was able to get myself a mortgage and buy a small house. And when I got married, right, on a postman's wage, that is impossible now because of the amount of deposit they want to have. So we got people 30 and beyond, not on the property ladder at all.
We do too.
So they're not going to have that opportunity to cash in on the big house, you know, like you mentioned, etc. They're not going to have that opportunity. So whilst I really applaud, and I mean that, someone raising the profile in a different way, it's like pensions. In the UK, workers, as I know them, you say pensions, you know, unless they're of a certain age, it's like a cure for insomniacs. You know, they're not interested in, what is that you're talking about, a pension? If you talk about a wage in retirement, so if you change language and you're putting epic retirement and etc., then I think you've got a chance of engaging with people. But the products have to be there for them. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the products at the moment aren't there because DC schemes are not producing that lump sum that you can then go and invest and that.
And you're 10 years behind us easily in Australia, right?
Enable you to travel and everything. I'm pointing this out because I think it's great what you're doing, that someone's raising the profile and trying to give it a different feel and get people engaged a lot younger, right? But even if you do, the products have got to be there for them. And what's got to be attacked is the people, the governments, the people that they're putting barriers in the way of that, you know, that nice, the idyllic sort of look at life that people have genuinely got the choice at that age. That's the challenge that you're up against. But I, on a positive note, I absolutely believe what you're doing is the right thing to raise the profile. I think it's right to get people engaged, but there's got to be another angle to your work, and that has got to be holding a mirror up to the people that make the policies, the products, the government, the rules, what you do with state.
I do that here. I do it here. I may need your help to make sure I hold the right issues up. That's very important to me, that I don't come in and just throw around issues, because for me in Australia, we have 62% of people dependent on the age pension here at retirement at the moment as well. And there is a different narration I use to educate those people. In fact, the pension program that I'm launching with One Fund is actually with the lowest socioeconomic women in the country. We've tailored my program for those women with super balances of between $40,000 and $80,000 to help them understand how they can live on a combination of the age pension and a small income from their superannuation and juggle hard things, right? And to help those women is probably one of the most honourable jobs I get to do, because those are the women not getting helped anywhere by the government or anyone. We have an age pension that declines as your wealth increases here. And I personally think that's a better conversation for the UK, very politically difficult, but that type of pension works much better than pushing ages back to 70, right?
Sorry, I describe it like this. In this country, my absolute belief is there is a tidal wave of pensioner poverty coming down the road, because there's a generation coming behind us that have nowhere near in a position or got enough to plan for that retirement in any way, shape or form. That's the challenge. So, okay.
Compulsory contributions have done a lot of job in Australia. We've had 9%. So my generation have had above 9% for almost our whole career. And that has changed everything for that group that has had that. That's not the ones coming into retirement today. That's the one 10 years later. But so that's a different, and I don't bring the primetime conversation in when I bring the epic one in. That's a very, positive enablement midlife conversation. I probably should strip that quite clearly from the epic launch, because epic is about anyone can have an epic retirement. It's up here. It's your will to use what you've got to have a better life and build community. It's not about affluence at all, to be honest. It's the primetime conversation brings in a little more middle class kind of possibility. And the ability to enable yourself. So I can very much, because it's not written into the book, none of the primetime stuff really is in the book. It's all about layering what you've got together to make a wage. I don't use the
we'll
word
find-
wage.
we'll
It's a
find
good
quite a lot
word
of
to
stuff.
use.
Beck, we'll find a lot of things like OECD, which show that in some respects we're better than you and you're better than us and all that stuff. But what you're talking to us about this morning is about confidence and about going out and doing the things which you need to do in order to be happy. I'm totally comfortable with that. I know Terry as well as anyone I think on this screen, and I'll tell you that there is no man who is more positive about his future and ours than he is. So please don't come away with that.
No, I love
But
it. I love the feedback is incredible. It allows me to really settle where it needs to land when we land with everyday conversation as well, which that feedback is phenomenal. Thank you.
I've got Chris on the line here. I think, Chris, you wanted to say something some time ago. Do you want to say your bit? And then if there's no chance, we'll come back to you, Terry, or to Bobby Weiss, who's still on the call. Yeah.
Beck, broadly speaking, I'm in agreement with the overall thrust of your presentation. I mean, I've for some time have thought that all this talk about increasing our auto enrollment rates from 8%, you're quite right. What people in their 20s and 30s, they just don't have the money. I mean, we're most of us on this call are a generation. If we went to university, we didn't have a student loan to pay for it. But all those in their 20s and 30s are effectively taxed at 9% more in the UK than everybody else because they pay student loans. So I think we should be concentrating on extra contributions from 40 onwards. And the one area that we're not concentrating on, I think, enough is when you're sort of setting up prime time or pre-retirement is, like you, I think we've got about 80% of 80-year-olds in this country who own a home. And they are the people that the 50-year-olds are inheriting from, essentially. So 50-year-olds are inheriting lump sums, and we don't make the effort, I think, to point out to people that they can throw quite a lot of that money into their pension scheme.
Magic.
As a capital sum, it goes in as an income over maybe a 2 or 3 year period. But people don't necessarily understand that. But if you've got a small pot of, say, 40 or 50,000, maybe even less, but you inherit 100,000, you can throw 30, 40,000 probably in over 2 or 3 years, and suddenly you've got a pot north of 100,000.
Magic. Yeah.
In fact,
I mean, and they are all the little lessons.
Because the government will give you will top it up as well. So and we
that's
don't.
That's an article in itself. That's just a total. You know, each week in Australia, I come up with a column like that I put in the newspapers, and you know, I look for kernels like that every single week that I can just educate a single issue, and people go, "Oh, yeah, I could," and off they trot with a little bit of knowledge on how.
You're writing stuff in the Times. You're telling it. Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping to do with the Times. So yeah, we've just had a chat with them about having a column, and they've said yes. So I'm excited that I get to.
Well, you've got people like Charlotte on this call, and all of us would be happy to chat in if we can to give you.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Because
that's how I learned in this industry in Australia. I didn't come from the industry, and the industry's been so warm. Even when I've been difficult, like I've actually flagged when a pension fund didn't pay their members for 3 days because they completely cocked up their systems and they didn't tell anyone in Australia, and I was the one that noticed. Because I listened to the consumers and I heard it on the radios and I heard it in my community, and I called it out in media and said, why are we not even talking about it? Because the journalists don't even know when older people don't get paid by their pension fund, right? They don't even know how pension funds work over here.
Yeah. There's one other quick thing that there is a similarity between our two. I'm an investment specialist. So what I focus on is that people shouldn't be looking to maximize a pot of money at a specific age, 65. They should be looking to maximize their sustainable retirement income from age 65, and that they should be setting up during the pre-retirement period. So what they should be doing is investing for income. So when they get to 65, if the market crashes but their investment still pays the same income, then they don't have a problem. But if they're focused purely on a capital sum at a particular date, they're leaving themselves essentially with a potential cliff edge. And that's
since we got rid of what was known as pension freedoms, or introduced pension freedoms, compulsory annuitization over here, we should have done that at the same time. We should have moved away from
pot conversion at retirement to planning income from retirement in the period running up to retirement, and that's a whole new ball game. And the one thing that we've got in common with you is we both have one of the or two of the highest yielding equity markets in the world, the UK and Australia. Now, I know we all probably invest overseas, etc., like you probably invest overseas in the same way that we do, of course, but your equity market, so that what you can talk to your people about is the fact that your equity market yields 4% like ours does, and therefore that's a natural benchmark.
Okay, let's move very quickly to John. We're right at the end of our meeting. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And
John,
investment is a massive conversation.
Yeah, thanks.
I feel sort of in a minority here as an advisor dealing with wealthy people, which I've now retired from, effectively. But I think you'll find in Britain, your problem is people don't actually think forward. They procrastinate. And I used to challenge people by challenging them, what will your life look like 3 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? And we were trying to teach them to be financially independent at an earliest age possible. And I did some lectures in New Zealand with Bernard Salt of KPMG from Sydney.
Oh, awesome. I know him well. I'm often on stage with him.
On demographics. I got the short straw. I had to talk about compliance. Which was amusing.
He's always super entertaining.
Yeah. No, but if we can get people to think earlier and actually give them the responsibility of thinking what 3 years from now looks like, and also get rid of this idea that if I die, mortality is one each, and it's when, not if. And people buy themselves some tolerance of the procrastination by imagining it's if. And you've got to get that message across. What we do about the people who have got inadequate pensions today, I have no idea, because the productivity of the country is abysmal. It's abysmal. It's competitive. I sent an article to Henry today from the LSE. In the last 15 years, the difference between the productivity of the States and the UK has more than doubled. The differences. So where's the spare money coming from above subsistence? We've got a third of the population that doesn't earn enough money to pay tax. How are they going to save at all? We've got to look after those people socially. That's the reality. But the secret is going to come from productivity and stop selling our silver to foreign aids, like Macquarie buying the Thames. And
yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to wind up very soon. But I'd like just give Beck a chance to finish off. And can you just help us if we need to keep in touch with you? What would you like us to do?
I think as I start to look, I'm coming over to the UK in 2 weeks for the first time, and I don't know everybody, and I'm learning my way. So for me, I hope I can have 1 foot in Australia and 1 foot in the UK educating. And I hope I can find the way to do my courses in the UK with UK locals helping. Grow that. For me, this journey is just at its beginning. The book is the first thing. The column is next. So it's finding issues to help consumers understand piece by piece, and really just getting to know you. It's a wonderful thing to have friends as I come in.
How long are you there for? How long are you in the
I'm
UK
coming for 2 weeks. I'm coming up to Manchester for the pensions conference, and I'm in London for a week. The week before.
Can you just, if we send you an invite on LinkedIn, can people connect with you that way?
Absolutely.
Is that a sensible way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
totally. I'm very LinkedIn friendly.
Stay in touch with Beck, do it through LinkedIn. Please. And keep going, and you might be able to get to meet.
I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm gonna be in London, and I meeting some of the funds and having just really, this is an exploration for me. I started this way 2.5 years ago in Australia. I have the consumer. I have 600,000 consumers, half of which are in the UK. So I don't fear finding enough people to read the book. I fear what I don't know yet about the consumer and how to really do the right job for them. And I want, if you can help me we can make a good job of this, I think, in educating. It's working really well in Australia.
Okay, well, we're going to have to close it now, but thank you very much indeed, Beck. Just as a word, next week, I think we've got things lined up. I'd like everyone to say thank you, as I see Chris has already given her a clap.
Thank you, everyone.
And we'll say a prayer for those countries which are suffering at the moment, in particular Gaza and Ukraine, but all over the world where there's grief. Let's give them that, which Steve always promotes. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks very much, Chris, for organising it. Cheers, Beck.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.